Welcome to VoterListsOnline.com and the training session to cover all the information contained within the website. Once you've logged into VoterListsOnline.com, you'll get to the Getting Started screen, which just covers some basic information, milestones, and just the history of your account on the main screen. To make queries, counts, and to actually generate files, you need to go to the Queries tab. All of the query that you build and to be able to run counts are contained within this tab on the Query Builder section. On your main screen, you have multiple tabs here for multiple options to select, and then you have the interface over here on the right side to generate your counts. You have a drop-down screen for your state, and then you also have the state summary link, which is state-specific, and it will give you further information about the state, when the data was last acquired, and the last change of address that was run for the particular state. Also, some more state-specific information that's contained on the right side that's helpful is the Click Here for Vote History section. It will open up an Excel spreadsheet that will give you a breakout for the state itself, broken out by county. It gives you a total for voters, households, and the specific elections. This is a good reference sheet to be able to see what data is contained within each of the elections that we have on file. You have general elections, presidential preference primary. You also have primary, general, and other. Other contains fields such as recalls, special elections, runoffs, and some of the more localized municipal elections. And as you see here, a lot of the information is specific to particular counties. Some counties may have information that other counties do not. This is important when running statewide counts and the counts showing low, is to actually look at this to be able to see that there may be information not contained within the specific elections. On your main screen, you have the options here, and we'll go through each one of these. Add jurisdiction are your political and postal jurisdictions. You'll have each one of these sections that you can click on to select the information on the right side. If you need to select a particular district, click with your mouse to highlight it, hit OK, and it carries it to the main screen. And click your red X to delete that information if need be. If you need to select multiple districts, click on the first one you're looking for, hold your Control key down, and select the ones you're looking for. Hit OK, and then all of those will be brought over to the Query Builder screen. All of these districts here are based on source information. You can click on each one and see the elected officials' names there. Same for county. Your precinct and ward designation is based on whatever you select for the above districts. So in this case, what we'll do is we'll select one particular county, click on precinct ward, and then we can select the Load Reload Precinct Ward button. You have the option of being able to filter out some of the extraneous data that's contained from the source by selecting the 10 times or dropping it down to 1 time. It's basically if the count totals a certain amount, it will filter out some of the extraneous data that may come over from the source. In this instance, we've got a breakout based on the county. If there are wards contained in the data, you will see those listed. Same for precinct name, and in this particular county, all we have is a precinct number and then a count based on that. Same concept with selecting one or multiple districts here, as you can select your boxes, hit OK, and those particular precincts will then be carried over to the Query Builder screen. A lot of the more localized districts are loaded here. These are state-specific. Many different states have different designations for these fields. Some states do not contain this data at all. So if you load any of these screens and the information does not appear, that will let you know immediately that that information is not contained in that particular field. Now, there may be other fields that do contain the information that you're looking for, and we will look at that information further in the custom search screen. If you do have questions that are specific to these particular district names, if certain things are not contained there, or if they are loaded in certain other district designations, feel free to give us a call or email us for specific questions to identify if that information is contained within the data that we get from the source. Another thing to point out is that when you pull down these smaller districts in the records, it does take longer to actually pull up the information in our data file. This is especially the significant occurrence on larger states as well. The larger the unit is, the longer it may take to pull that information. So in this case, we do have city district information for these particular cities. Same thing for county commission and same thing for school district. If the information is contained within the data, you can pull that on our file. Municipality is a field that looks at the city proper. To explain the difference between city proper and what we commonly refer to as residence city, the city proper are the boundary lines for the city-specific elections, mayor, city council, things of that nature. Residence city is actually based on the U.S. Postal Service's designation for that city. Atlanta, Georgia, New York City, the Postal Service may consider something in Atlanta that's not, it's well beyond the lines for the city proper. So if you're looking for elections for particular districts, cities in particular, you want to use the municipality field as opposed to the residence city field. Another important thing to point out is the difference between residence city and mail city. We have two different address designations on our data. We have a residence address, city, state, and zip, which essentially is the physical address for that voter, where that person is registered to vote. And then we have the mail address, mail city, mail state, and mail zip on our file as designated as M address, M city, M state, and M zip. That is where the U.S. Postal Service delivers their mail. Common reference is P.O. Box. They may be physically registered to vote at 123 Oak Street, but they may get their mail at P.O. Box 123. So in that case, this is where you can have a different designation for that. Designated marketing area. This is based on media markets. We have the media codes there. So if you're looking for cable buys or just wanting to hit particular media markets, we have that applied to the voter file as well. Those will overlap into multiple states oftentimes, or often cover a large number of counties. So the designated marketing area selection will actually take a little longer than usual as well. You will see the green $ on some of the fields on our voter file or on the website itself. This designates a higher cost per record for our drive-by or instant buy clients. Clients that have a contract with us for data, that information is typically included on the price of the contract that's negotiated. The exemption from that are the mobile cell phone numbers. If you have questions about that, feel free to contact your contact support or your sales representative for specifics on the pricing. Next section is demographics. You have age, gender, ethnicity, and some background about the household itself. Self-explanatory as far as the options that you can select here. Age and birth date, we have 3 different fields for age. Again, not all information is included from the data we get from the source. So what we do with our voter file is we append additional sources to the file to give you the maximum amount of information to be able to micro-target or reach the intended audience that you need to for your efforts. Birth date field is the actual field that comes over from the source. You can type in the year, month, and date there. Another option that you have is typing in the age range or the age indicator. These are age brackets, or the single designation for age. So if we're looking for 55 and above, we can type that information in there, and you'll see that it'll auto-populate the birth date range for you based on today's date. And if we're looking for the same thing for the age indicator bracket, we select OR, which gives us the maximum number of records on the file that have any sort of age identifier to them. OR is important if we're wanting to get that highest number, because not all records will have all three applied to them. Gender, male and female. Typically, most of this information comes from the source. We try to fill in the gaps for any blanks as best as possible as well. Deceased and moved, you'll have these checked as default. Deceased is based on the Social Security Administration's database on deceased. You'll see the match criteria here. Moved is based on U.S. Postal Service change of address filings from that person. Not all people fill this out, so you may get people who slip through the cracks, especially now we have many people trying to escape creditors, debt collectors, things of that nature. Many people are not filling out a change of address anymore, so you're starting to get a higher number of people essentially falling through the cracks as far as that goes. These are defaulted. We highly recommend that you keep them checked on all data purchases. Ethnicity and minority. This is based on both source information and consumer information. Source information on ethnicity only comes from sources that fall under the Voting Rights Act. Typically, these are southern states or a couple of other states that do not have or that do apply for that information. What we'll do is we'll change over to a Voting Rights Act state, and you will see under ethnicity that there will be a designation for ethnic code. Again, not all states will have this. This is self-reported, and this is what we consider the most accurate of the ethnicity information that we have on our voter file. Again, others come from our consumer file enhancements. We have multiple options for that, and including some legacy options as well. You have the operators for and or. If you're wanting to see the highest count, then you would use the or operator that essentially looks at all the fields that you select for a particular ethnicity. You also have the option for census ethnicity based on the census tract and blocked information. So if you're looking for Hispanic above 90% and a census block area, you can hit OK, and that will carry it back over to your query builder screen. Again, with a margin of error of at most 10%, you will get other ethnicities included in the voter file count that you're looking for. But this is, again, another method of being able to identify high density ethnicities of whatever you select here. We have options for is Hispanic and is African American. To explain what this is checking this box here actually looks at all the Hispanic options that are available under the ethnicity and minority option. So instead of having to go through here and selecting all of these options for Hispanic, Honduras, if you have multiple Hispanic type options under here, having to check all these boxes, you can instead just go to is Hispanic, check this box, and it will pull all of those for you. So this is a single source information to be able to encompass all of the ethnicity options for Hispanic there. Same concept for African American as well. Language and assimilation. Certain language backgrounds or assimilation, if you're making phone calls or doing mailings and wanting to exclude certain possibilities for that, you can do that as well. family and children. These are the options that we have appended to our voter file. Age ranges and gender for particular children. We have the option for presence of children. Number of adults. They may not be registered to vote, but the number of adults that are contained within the household. Number of children in the household. You can use this for larger families. Number of persons in the household, which includes adults and children. Household contains a single parent. Household has grandchildren. Household marital status. And voter trailer. Essentially, voter trailer is looking at the number of registered voters within the household. Education, look at their education background. Again, if you're wanting to select multiple fields here, hold your control key down, highlight the ones you're looking for, and then hit OK to carry it back over to your Query Builder screen. Religion, a few options to select for religion. Interest in religion or spirituality, interest in religious or spiritual literature, is a Christian family, and then specific religion fields here. What we have a lot of clients that do is select these fields coupled together with, say, party code to identify Christian conservatives if they selected interest here and then party code of R, or conservative party. So you can use these coupled together with other selections to identify or micro-target specific audiences. Add party. This is specific to states. Some states fall under 3 different categories. We have party registration states, such as California, Florida, Pennsylvania, New York, and a few other states. The second criteria, or the second category, would be states that have primary vote history, states such as Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina. The only way I can identify someone's partisan affiliation is by the primaries that they select. The thing we caution with that is that you have people that may have voted Republican in one primary and then crossed over and voted Democrat in another. And then we have states such as Minnesota, Missouri, Wisconsin, Michigan that have no primary or no party identification whatsoever. So those are the 3 types of states that we have on any sort of party ID. So in this case, for Georgia, you'll get the designation here that party identification can be determined by primary vote history, and to use the vote history page for this option. So what we'll do is we'll switch over to a party registration state to see the parties that are available for California. And again, this list right here will vary from state to state. States like Ohio will have Republican, Democrat, and essentially other, which is anyone who falls in the middle. The total list of all the party options that we have nationwide are over here on the left side. And again, using your control key will give you the ability to select multiple parties there. And hit OK, and that carries back over to the Query Builder screen. For states that actually have party registration, we also have the household party mix option. You can find those that have pure partisan households, mixed party households, or no R or no D designations there. Vote history. What we'll do is we'll drop over to a state that has primary vote history to be able to explain the vote history section a little more detail. This is how to select people who have voted in specific elections. Now you can go to a very basic election criteria to a very complex election criteria. If I'm looking for someone who voted in the 2012 presidential primary as a Republican, in Texas I could do or voted Republican any method. Now this will include early voters, early Republican voters, early absentee, or the absentee Republican voters, or day of election Republican voters. I select my green plus, and it will select any sort of Republican that voted in the presidential primary. Hit Add to Query, hit OK, and that information carries over. And this is just a very basic vote history requirement. Something a little more involved is someone who voted in at least one or higher of a particular set of elections. I'm looking for someone who voted Democrat in at least one of 3 particular elections. So I select my 3 elections. I scroll down and I have the voting frequency type, at least one of those 3 elections. Click my green plus, and this will be voted Democrat any method in at least one of those 3 elections. Something even more in-depth is building multiple election criteria to find even more advanced options here. To give you a scenario, is we're looking for people who do not vote in any of the partisan primaries, but do vote in general elections. So what we'll do is we'll say did not vote, and we'll go back to 2004 in any of these partisan primary elections. When I have all of these selected, if I go and click the plus, it will mean it will change to and. So people who did not vote in any of these primaries, but I want someone who has at least voted in one of the past 3 generals. So they are a voter, but they're not voting in partisan primary elections. Click my green plus. And so I've got people who did not vote in any primary here, but people who did vote in a general here. So I want the commonality between those 2, so I'll select those 2, and I want the AND operator. And the Venn diagrams, basically the people who have both of these in common, and I build this complex query. I go Add to Query, and you'll see it here. Did not vote in any of the primaries, but did vote in at least one of the generals. So that gives you a little more of an idea of a more complex query. Another option to include on that is someone who is newly registered to vote. So I may want people who qualify for this, but I also want to dump in some of the new registrants as well. So what I'll do is OR, keep that as an OR, and anyone who is registered since election day, providing that I have a voter file that is newer than that date. Something to keep in mind with the registration date, this will vary from state to state. Some states, the registration date field applies to anyone who has changed their registration at all. So I may move to a different subdivision in my county, but because that registration will change, my registration date changes as well. So technically I'm not a newly registered voter, but the date would imply that I am. So in that case, you need to essentially check on the state that you're looking for to verify if that is the case there. One more field to cover is the voter status if I'm wanting to exclude inactive. Typically, the only time that you would use this is if you're not using vote history requirements, but you're wanting to make sure that the inactive voters were excluded. Usually when you're using vote history, you are looking at their activity, and so it would not apply for that. The next 2 sections, add mail and add phone, are critical for all mail clients and all phone clients. We do have videos specific to each criteria here that show you how to pull for best mail and best phones. And because each one of these will actually impact the other, we highly recommend that if you're doing a mail count and a phone count, to do each one separately, because the criteria that you add for one will impact the criteria count for another. So what we'll do is we'll go for mail first. And generally what we consider best mail and best phones will give you the bare minimum of what you need to do to get that. And anything else you add after that is up to you. So for best mail, we highly recommend that you check the only CAS certified mail address option. What this does is it will ensure that you have the Zip+4 option for your mail, essentially a deliverable address for that particular voter. You hit OK, and that carries that over to the screen. Anything else you add, the address type of Zip 5+4. If you're wanting to omit certain aspects or include certain ones, that's the option for that. Also, if you're running for phone, again, you want to run your mail separate from your phone. For best phones, the options are has phone and phone quality that steer you to the best phones category. Checking this box under has phones ensures that it is a full 10-digit phone number and a working phone number. Phone quality ensures that it actually matches to the person that you're wanting to call, or the voter file, the record that's on file there. So these two criteria, checkbox here, phones 1 through 5, are the bare minimum that you want to get best phones. If you're needing to get as many records as possible, you don't care of the accuracy, you're just wanting to hit as many phones as possible, you can generally exclude the phone code criteria or add to the phone source options here. What phone source does is it will include records that have the original phone number that have not been verified. This could include bad phone numbers. It could include working phone numbers, but to other people, unlisted phone numbers, and or possible cell phone numbers. These are just numbers that we have not been able to identify as valid or working in any way whatsoever. We highly caution you on selecting this option here. Mobile phone suppression, because of the new FCC regulations, if you're doing robocalls, you will need to make sure that your phone list is suppressed from mobile phones. We run two different processes. One is a daily process or a nightly process. Another one is a monthly process. So between the two, that you have the best filter for cell phone suppression on the market. Checking that box will suppress any possible mobile phones in your file. Do not call. Any records that show up in the federal do not call registry, check this box and it will filter those out. If you're wanting to pull up by area code, you can load the area codes there and check those boxes for area codes. If you're wanting to pull records for mobile phones only, you can use the two options down here for mobile phones. Now, the cost is higher for mobile phones. It's 7 cents plus whatever record rate you are paying. If you have a question about the pricing, feel free to contact us to just verify what your pricing is. To pull mobile phones, you select this option first, followed by this one. You'll select mobile phone here and include validated mobile phones. We get our phones from several different sources. We validate them with each other to give you the highest accuracy, especially paying a higher rate. So checking this will ensure greater accuracy. Mobile phone quality, same with just the phone quality, 1 through 5. If you're wanting to identify records that have, more than likely they are mobile phone only. This is people who are using their cell phone as the only means to communicate. You select this box here. The thing that we caution people with is that they may have a landline that is an unlisted number. So this is not 100% accurate, but it has a high accuracy percentage there. Micro-targeting. Some of these fields are redundant from other screens. Some of these are new, so what I'll do is I'll cover the new ones. Income and wealth. We have two different sources for household income and household wealth. If you want to find the maximum number again, you want to use the OR operator. We're wanting to find everyone with 50,000 and above as their household income or the wealth codes. You could use the OR and it will look at both of those fields. Marital status, single or married. Presence of children and education are previously explained. Business owner, if they own a business or if they have a home business. This is identified with some records. These counts will be lower. These are just the ones that we've been able to identify. Contributor is a section that has been used successfully for solicitation of contributions. It's also been successfully used to profile people of certain interest as well. If you're looking for people that have given to specific causes to solicit, you can definitely select the multiple ones here by holding your control key down. If you're wanting to profile people of a specific lean politically, environmental coupled with party registration D are looking at your left-leaning environmentalist. If you're looking for people who identify with certain party affiliations, especially in states that have no party ID whatsoever, like Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, you can look at politically conservative and use that as a party identifier. Essentially options here that can be used with other options to micro-target specific interest. FEC contributor. We highly recommend you read the red language here before looking any further on this field. FEC guidelines says you cannot solicit from this information. So do not use this as a fundraising list. This is an FYI field here for the data. Children's age ranges, again, this is redundant. Homeowner, probable renter, probable homeowner, homeowner and renter. Home value, less likely to be accurate because of the home value drops nationwide. And then lifestyle preferences on magazine purchases and merchandise purchases. If you're looking for people of certain lifestyles, food merchandise, female merchandise, garden merchandise, general merchandise, etc. Again, when you start selecting these fields, your totals will drop. So we caution you when selecting these types of fields, you may want to use the OR operators to give you a higher count on your files. Geospatial is something that can be used to identify people who live within a radius of a certain destination. To give you some examples of how this has been used, hospital initiative on healthy eating. Essentially, you can type in the address of the hospital and use this to identify people who live within a 5-mile radius of a particular location. If you're looking at school districts or things of that nature, whatever the audience is that you're looking for, you can use the geospatial option to draw boxes for that particular area. So based on whatever your data point is that you're wanting to pull, and we'll just pick one here. If you're looking at University of Texas and wanting to find everyone who lives within a certain mile radius, select your radius search, left click your mouse to get your crosshair, drag out with your mouse. Bottom right corner there, you see the orange box that gives you your kilometer or mileage range there. And if we're looking at, we'll say 2 miles, we'll drag back in here. Right click to get your circle. Click your gear And what it will do is it will begin to generate a count based on the records that fall within this radius. And to explain how we're able to do this is that each record in our voter file is assigned a rooftop latitude and longitude coordinate. Essentially, this will then pull based on that rooftop latitude and longitude for that particular range that you're looking for. So for the location of interest, as I mentioned, you can type in an address there. You can type in a zip code, a city name. You can use different options there to give you your central data point to base whatever unit that you're looking at here. You've got your square or rectangle box that you can use also, or your polygon shape. To give you an example of how people have used the polygon shape is that if they're wanting to include a certain area of town, you can use the polygon shape to give you the multiple lines there. Another creative use of this is to pull people who live within a mile of each side of a railroad track or an oil pipeline. We had a client looking for an environmental study and people who live within a mile of each side of a pipeline that went through half the state of Texas. You can use the box, the polygon box for that. And as you see here, we get the result total. And if we're wanting to carry this back over, we can just hit and, hit close, and our geospatial region is now loaded on the screen there. To go back over some other options here, is you've got the coordinates. If you have a latitude, longitude coordinate specifically, you can identify that here on this option. We also have a GIS library. If you have access to shapefiles for a district or a city that we may not have information for, typically shapefiles are loaded on county and city websites. You can email us the shapefile, we can load it, and you have the ability to load what we have in our library. And to give you an example for Texas is that we have the County Commission District for Galveston County, shapefiles for that. You see we have independent school districts here. So you have all of these options here to be able to select on the voter file. So if you have one of these that you're looking for, you can click the highlight and hit create, and it will create this on the main screen for you. Next option is custom searching. Essentially what this will do is it will look at all fields that we have in our voter file. Let me actually take this off here, because as I said before, each one of these builds on previous ones. The geospatial will actually add to the time it takes to run the count. So just for purposes of this, I'll erase that from the query. You have the custom search option and then the custom search breakout. So you have two different ways of pulling this. The custom search option is very similar to the vote history option of how you can build complex queries here. And you have a drop down which will list all of the fields that we have on our voter file. So if we're looking for someone who has an interest in NASCAR, select that and it will give us the option for what data point is applied to there, and we'll say exactly equal to Y. And you have the drop down option here to be able to see what type of formulas we can build off of that. So with Y, we'll hit the green plus. And if that's all we're looking for, we could add to query. Or we can find something a little more complex like Hunter exactly equal to Y. And we can find those with an interest in NASCAR and Hunter. Build this complex query, add this to our main query builder screen, and include that in our count. Something a little more advanced is the custom search breakout, if you're just looking for what's actually contained within the field itself. This is actually a good field to use, referencing the municipality and the city district options there, is that each state has various types of information. It really depends on the state specific itself. And this gives you the ability to go and see what actually is contained within that data field. So what we can do is we can look at, let me pick, we'll say contributor to political organizations, generate breakout, and what it will do is we'll look at all the data points in there and list all the options that we have for that particular selection. So for instance, if you have party code, if you selected party code in California, it would break out those with the party code of R, those give you a count with the party code of D, etc., and actually show you what you're looking for within that field. Depending on the field and the size of the query that you're looking for, this could take time. And as I mentioned before, please do not try to escape or back out of something if it's taking a little while. Please let it continue to run. If you have a question about something taking what you believe to be longer than usual, please give us a call and we can take a look at it on the back end. What typically happens is clients will look at this and think something is wrong, and they'll cancel out of it or close out of the browser. If that's the case, the process still runs on the server, even though the client cannot tell that, and then every time they get back in and try to do it again, it just creates a greater workload on the server. So this is where we just tell clients, please be patient on something a little more complex than this. Another thing that you have the ability to do is when you get the breakout on here is the ability to export it out to Excel. You may want to see a breakout if you have, for instance, something that's on the county and you want to break out by precincts. You have the ability to break it out to Excel here. We also have an option for pivot tables, which you'll see back on the main screen that I'll go over in greater detail later. Just the ability to get a breakout on the counts for those particular codes. And as I mentioned before, just to go back over the concept of particular fields, some states may have something that is coded as city council district. Some states may have it coded as ward. This gives you the ability to scroll down and see those types of fields, and where something you may think is called city council may be on the source file coded or converted as ward. So you can actually use this screen to help you better navigate through to see where that data is located. Typically, this is where most of our data questions come from. We'll have someone that's looking for a city council race in a particular city, and we may have the data on file. It just may be in another field, and this just gives you the means of being able to click around to find if that information is just in another field in the data file. All right, so we've got our breakout to this particular data point. And you see this particular field, what the counts are for D and for R, and the number of times that they've made the contributions as well. So this gives you an idea of what data points are, what the breakout of the data points are. And again, you can click on Excel if you want to export it out to Excel. If you're wanting to select one of the fields, then down here at the bottom, you can click on the one that you want. And if you want to select more than one, you can hold your control key down to get multiple ones. And then you can go to add to custom search, and you'll see that's now loaded on there. And then you can add that to the query. The next option for Add Dedupe is an option that if you made a purchase on a previous file and you're running a query and you're wanting to omit that previous purchase, Add Dedupe gives you the ability to filter out that previous purchase. It is state specific, so it will only pull up the states that are contained in there from previous purchases, and you just check the box that you're looking for and run your count based on that. Now, anything that you pull on your Query Builder screen will essentially pour over to the counts that you're wanting to select. So if you're looking for mail counts, you'll look at your options for mail, which would be your households and addresses. To explain the difference between household and address, household is based on same last name, same address. So essentially it's basing it on like husbands and wives that share the same surname, or family members that share the same surname. Address bases it solely on the address. So it filters out any of roommates, anyone with different last names on the data. So if you're looking to essentially cut down on redundant mailing and one piece per address, then this is the option that you would select for that. For your phones, you have the phone option here. You also have household phone to filter out based on the same last name as well. You may have a husband that has a phone number in there and a wife that has a different phone number, and you're wanting to unique it so that only one person per household gets that. You can select that option there as well. Mobile phones, running unique mobile phone criteria, and then all phones which look at mobile and landline. If you've built a complex query that you're wanting to save, you may want to actually use this option here. So if you've got this complex query, the vote history, you've got gender, age, all sorts of other criteria built into it, and you're not wanting to have to go back to rebuild this again. Say, for instance, you're running a count now, but you may not need it until next week. You can build that complex query, save it. We'll give this a name here. Well, actually, let me just pick some other criteria. So I've got this complex query that I may wind up having to order next week, but I just need the count now. Click Save as New Query. This information will be saved for a later date. Now it tells me it's saved successfully. A week passes by and I need to reload that, so I go to Query Manager, Galveston 55 plus mail. I load the query, and then that information reloads back here, and I can run that same count today and get the file if I need to order it. The thing about saved queries, it is based on what you selected that day. So using the instance of birth date, it is reflective of the day that I built it. The days change, so if you did not save this and went back and added the criteria a week later, the counts may reflect a different total because the dates changed for the birth date. So please keep that in mind as well if you're running any sort of counts over multiple periods of time, particularly with age ranges there. Another option that we were talking about earlier was the pivot and advanced pivot options. If you're running counts and you're wanting to break the counts out, pivot table gives you a very basic functionality of one single selection for column, one single selection for row, based on the fields you select there. You can base it on individual household address phone, just like with the counts. You click Run, and it will generate the breakout for you and the ability to export it out to Excel. Advanced Pivot gives you a far more advanced option for pivot tables. If you're familiar with pivot tables in Excel, this is a very similar concept here of where you can select multiple fields, and we will go with age indicator, which is our age range. And we will do gender. And then for our rows, since we're dealing with Galveston County, we'll just deal with the county name there. You can pretty much build this however you want, and again, you can use as many field options for each one of these. If we want to do it by individual, we can click Execute. And in this case, since we are pulling 55 and plus, it'll give us the breakouts for those. It'll show us that, in our case, since we only pulled male, it will only give us that as well. So if our breakout had nothing to do with gender, we would have a male column and a female column for each one of these fields. So you can come up with something very complex here. Again, if you're familiar with this in Excel, this is where you may see a lot of crowded information there. If you've got multiple counties pulled up here and wanted to break it out by county, and you're wanting to see the overall total, you can select Show Summary Total, and it will give you the total for each one of those rows and columns as well. If I'm wanting to export it out to Excel, we can do that here, a PDF or HTML, the static screen. This is a good way to actually get metrics on a particular district. If you're pulling a congressional district, you're wanting to see the ethnic breakout, the age breakout, the gender breakout, you can do that using this screen here. This will definitely give you a better profile of the overall district that you're looking for. So now we're ready to actually order our data. So in this case, what I'll do, let me change the criteria up a little here. I'm ready to make a phone purchase. First, I want to see what the count is. So what I'll do is I've got my criteria here. I'm going to select, and I get my count of 3,042 records. I'm satisfied with that, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and check out. I'll go ahead and name my file. And I have the option of being able to include mobile phones if I do, and this is where the charge will go higher if I want to do that. For this, if you're selecting mobile phones, you need to make sure that your phone criteria was specifying mobile phones as well. Just pointing that out. I have the ability to pull all of those records, 3,042. I can pull a random sample, specific amount, or I can pull a targeted random sample and allocate on whatever criteria that I'm looking for. Now what I can do is I can allocate based on gender, age, whatever. If I'm wanting to do a sample that balances out, 51% male, 49% female, 55% Democrat, 45% Republican, this will give me the ability to balance out that sample based on whatever the targets are that I'm looking for. So if I am doing polling, this is generally a good idea or a good measure to be able to balance out the samples based on that criteria. We also have clustered sample and normalized random sample. So those are some of the options to output your file to. What we'll do is we'll just stick with a random sample of 1,000. We'll say finished. And essentially what happens now is that file will begin to generate. We can then go over to the My Files tab, and we can see the file is submitted and the purchase is to be determined. Then we'll get our screen here. We can go ahead and click purchase. If we have a drive-by or instant buy client, when you click purchase, it will give you the information to be able to input your credit card information for. For my account, which would be like a contract account, I click purchase and it's ready to go. Then I go back to the My Files tab, and then I can download the file. To download the file, I click the blue diskette, and it will generate the file for me. And you'll see the wheel spinning here. When the file is ready, this screen will turn to green, and then you will have the FTP link to be able to download the file. Now, what that link gives you the ability to do is to be able to copy it and paste it in an email. Say, for instance, if you're needing to get the file to a phone vendor or a mail vendor without having to download and attach the file. A lot of times if the file's too large, what you can do is just send the link to them. That way they do not have to log into your account. They can just get the link, click on it to download the file without having to worry about anything security with your account. Now with that, the files that you download will be in the default format as far as the fields that are included in the file. So for instance, when you click on this, in the previous file that we downloaded, we open up the file and we'll see the output layout and the file itself. So we'll double click on the file to open it up, and you'll see all the fields that are defaulted to include on the file. Now, if we're sending this to a mail house, the mail house could care less about half of these, or a good chunk of the fields there. All they want is name and address. And actually pointing out they want name and M address, M city, M state, and M zip. And you'll see that here. This is what the mail house will be using to do their mailing off of, as opposed to address, city, state, and zip. So if I wanted to make sure the file only contained those fields, what I could do is change my fields template. I can either change the default or I can add multiple templates there to select. So if I want to create one or modify one, I can click on Edit, and it brings up a field screen. And the ones that I've created are right here on the drop-down screen. So if I want a mail house template, or if I want to modify the one that I already created, select the drop-down field there. I can name it, rename it, and then I can select the fields over here, the ones that I may want to include or uncheck from the default. Since this is mail house, I go through here and uncheck all these fields because the mail house could care less about all this information. All they're wanting is the data for the address and the person's name. So you can go through here and uncheck all these fields, and you'll note the fields selected over here will drop each time I uncheck these boxes here. So I go through here, the ones that I don't want anymore are unselected, and when I'm satisfied with what's left, I can go through any of the fields that I want. When I'm satisfied, I hit save, close out of this, and if I'm wanting to send that particular type of layout to the mail house, change my fields template to mail house, click on my blue diskette, and it will generate the file in that particular layout. And you'll see the previous two that I've done are down here at the bottom. Now, anytime that I've got a file that has data that changes, a month ago I pull the file down, but we've run a change of address on the file since then. When I've downloaded the file again, that new information for that record will be contained in the new file. So when I go, every time I click on that blue diskette, if there's been changes to the data, that information will be reflected in the new generated file that I have there. Something else to keep in mind is the output format. I click on the screen there and I see the options listed for the type of output for the file download. So for instance, it's defaulted as CSV and Excel. If I'm wanting a DBF or if I'm wanting a walk list, things of that nature, I can change that. Again, click back on the blue diskette to get the particular fields that are the particular format that I'm wanting there. If I'm wanting to see the fields or the files that I've previously downloaded, there's a list filter option here. I can change that and see all the ones listed by hitting refresh back to whatever date that I'm looking for. If I'm wanting to archive them, remove them from the list, I can check the archive box, click the archive button, and that information will then be removed from the screen. If I'm wanting to pull back the archive files, I can go check the box down here and refresh, and the archive files that were previously hidden would now appear on the screen itself as well. To give an overall view of your account, how many records you've downloaded, just some accounting information for the block clients, you go to My Account and you can run reports for particular date ranges and generate the report and export to Excel to see a breakout of the files that you've downloaded. You can also go there to change your password, update email addresses, and any type of other information that you need on the registration as well. This gives you a general overview of VoterListsOnline.com. Again, this being a general overview, there may be some very specific instances that you have questions on. Again, the state-by-state scenarios, you may be looking for a township in a particular location that you're wondering how to actually pull that up on VLO. Feel free to kind of play around. Again, state by state, the fields vary. Looking at the particular county, really narrowing it down as close as you can, and then using the custom search option to look at the fields from there will help you figure that out. If I am looking for how a township is listed in a particular area, going ahead and paring it down as much as possible, and then going under custom search, looking for a township field, and then using the custom search breakout to find a list of the townships that are represented there is a good hint on how to do that. In many cases, you still may have questions on how to pull that, or you may have questions on vote history, why counts are running low for particular vote history. We have two means of being able to find answers to particular questions. You can email, all clients can use the VLO support@aristotle.com email to email questions to a team of people for specific questions. Our national data clients can use the nationaldata@aristotle.com email to email those specific questions as well. When asking questions, please give us as much information as possible. If you have a question about a query, you can look at the raw query information here, copy it and paste it in the email itself. If you have a question about a count, give us the count, the state that you're looking for, and the criteria that you're looking for. Giving us as much information immediately helps us to give a quick response and an accurate response to be able to assist you with. And again, this concludes the overall training video for VoterListsOnline.com.